Are you or have you ever experienced or witnessed abuse, even as a child, in any kind of a relationship? Or do you even know somebody who has experienced abuse? If you have, please listen in. Hi, I'm Carol Bettino, psychotherapist and author of Better Choices, Better Life, and Directions, Your Roadmap to Happiness. Today I have a very special guest. She has recently retired of 43 years as the CEO for Stepping Stones, which is the shelter for abused women and a treatment facility for them and their children. She is also a very dear friend of mine, so please help me welcome Robin Burke. Hey, Robin.
Hi, so nice to be here. And as you know, this topic is so important to me. It's been my whole life's work, and I appreciate being part of this. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me have you. But you know, the interesting part is that we've both done so much work in domestic violence, working with, victims of abuse, as well as workshops and seminars. So I thought this is a great way for us to start off with just defining what abuse is.
Yeah.
Because many people only think of it as being beat up.
Actually, and when they stop there and think, well, domestic violence is about getting hit, pushed, kicked, punched, whatever, then they aren't broadening. They're eliminating everything else, and they have a tendency to think that doesn't apply to me.
Right.
It might not be so bad because I'm not getting beat. I'm not going to the hospital. These things aren't happening to me. So this is perfect opportunity to broaden that definition of what it really is.
Yeah.
It'll be very helpful to people.
I think it's an excellent point to bring up because, like you said, it doesn't help them then relate to it. And it's so easy at that point to deny, justify, rationalize, well, it's not so bad. And one point I would like to bring up, even though our focus is going to be on women as the victims, and that is really only because this is what your shelter is all about. But please keep in mind, for the people who are listening, men can be abusers. Men can be abused as well. So please keep that in mind. We're not leaving out anybody that could be a victim. So tell them what domestic violence really is.
How we learned a long time ago that to really have people understand the broad definition of it, we needed to move beyond domestic violence, the crime of domestic violence, which every response is geared toward responding to the crime. It's a crime to be beaten, to be hit, to be punched, kicked, locked out of your house, grabbed, whatever that is. That's the crime of domestic violence. That's the thing that police, law enforcement respond to. That's the thing that there's crisis intervention for that. And what we need to do, if we really want to make headway, and we really want to get people to take a look at these relationships that are not good for them, we need to broaden that. And domestic violence is, think of it more as you're in a relationship that is creating pain, chaos, and unmanageability in your life. It is stealing away your authenticity of functioning from day to day. Those are, if you broaden it to include some of those definitions of domestic violence, you're more likely to go have your aha moment and go, you know what, I am going to call somebody about this. I am going to just check this out because it's creating pain.
Excellent point.
Yeah, you might not be getting hit.
Right.
But the same pain and chaos and confusion, and you're constantly trying to control the situation to eliminate the pain, that makes you nuts. That makes you crazy.
Right.
And so these broader definitions is really important to take a look at. And to look at, is this relationship in my best interest, or is it stealing my authenticity and my life away from me? Those are the things we want to cover when we define it. Do you want me to kind of go into some of those?
Yeah, we can absolutely talk about some of the different types of abuse. And but before we do that, I want to really talk about some of the characteristics and traits that abusers have, because you brought up such a great point when you were talking about that they deny some of the things that, so they can't relate to it, so they deny that it's not abuse because they're not getting hit.
Right.
But yet there are warning signs, those red flags that so many people in a relationship ignore and some are very overt and covert, and I'd like to cover both, and we're a good team when it comes to that, so I'll cover some of the overt ones, I'll let you cover some of the covert ones. But some of the red flags is to pay attention to, like in my last podcast when I was talking about narcissistic type behaviors, I talked about manipulation and control. And when a person is controlling, sometimes it could be so insidious you don't even realize they're controlling you. But they're saying things like, every time you're with your best friend or every time you're with your sister, we have a fight. I think it's because they hate me, they talk about me, and, I wish you weren't with them, but, whatever. And so the next time your sister calls or your best friend calls, you don't want to go out with them because you know what's going to happen. And then they come home and they question you. And the other thing I think that is showing a lot of that manipulation is when they say things like, they get to the point where they'll say, I don't think you should be around these people, or I don't like that job that you're in.
Isolating you.
Yes, they isolate you from your friends, from your family, and the next thing you know you feel like the only one I have to rely on is him, so he's, or her, if it was an abusive situation in reverse. But this is the potential of learning how not to react to them. So you are afraid to confront them for the fear of anger. So you learn about codependency, you learn about boundaries, you learn about assertive communication, but you're definitely afraid to do it because the last time you did it, you had a big fight. So they actually manipulate and control you through that kind of abuse.
Exactly.
And by doing that, they intimidate you. And they put you down enough, let's face it, you're going to think that you can't live without them. And another way they manipulate you is saying you'd never make it without me, or you're too fat, or, you're not smart enough, you don't have a job because they didn't want you to. But there's so many of the covert ones. Those are common that we can see, even though some will ignore. And the one thing I would tell you about red flags, don't ignore them. You see them. What you see is what you get. It'll only get worse, not better. What are some of the covert?
When you're in those relationships where you're both dancing around trying to find control and power, you lose yourself in that, and the stuff that's happening around you is very distorted. It is very difficult for you to make rational choices like, I need to go get help, or I need to get out of the house, or I need to talk to someone about this. You don't do that because everything is so chaotic and distorted in your mind. And you really do, to get help with these kinds of relationships, at some point you need to get to a point where you're willing to reach out, tell somebody what's going on, and check it out, and get some feedback from somebody that's not in the chaos with you.
Excellent.
Not your sister, not your mom, not your boss, not your best friends, but a professional that's outside of that chaotic system to give you healthy feedback, to help you start getting your moments of clarity so you can make some good decisions. Because it's almost like you're on a chemical when you're in these abusive relationships.
Yeah.
That chemical, it has in charge of your life, whatever the chemical
you
is.
almost get addicted.
Same thing.
You almost get addicted to the person.
The dance. You get addicted to that power and control shift going back and forth, and all the chaos and unmanageability and all the energy that you spend in trying to control it and make it look okay to the outside world, and covering it up and making excuses for the other person. It steals your soul. It steals your identity and your authenticity. And you need somebody outside of that system to help you get back to center and to make some healthy choices for yourself.
And I think the importance is when you do go and seek professional help, that you're talking with somebody who knows about domestic violence, but also that you be honest and say, this is what's going on. You don't have to call it, if you don't think it's abuse, it's okay. Go and talk to them and say, these are the behaviors. This is what he or she is doing to me. This is what's going on in my relationship. Because so many times people will come in with depression and anxiety, and I find out 5 weeks into it about what's going on at home.
They're in a crazy, unmanageable living situation. Yeah, absolutely. That's why we need to move from this focusing on the law enforcement response to domestic violence as a crime and broaden that definition so people are more likely to check it out and get out of that. And as long as they're thinking, I'm not getting hit, as long as the offender is going, well, I don't hit you, and I have a job and I give money, I put money and I pay the bills, then you discount and distort the pain and the unmanageability in the house.
Yeah, and that leads me to the next point, is that maybe going over some different types of abuse, because like you said, I make money, I have money, I take care of the bills. That economic abuse that people don't even think of because it's so covert. I'd bring up the psychological abuse first, but then I'd love you to talk about some of the covert abuse. But some of the psychological abuse is a lot of that demeaning, insulting, name calling, humiliating you, telling you can't make it without them, reminding you of how stupid you are because you made a mistake 6 weeks ago. It's like, and then that blame apology game. You talked about games. Also, it's another dance of the blame and apology, blaming you for everything, that even when they're abusive, they said, you made me angry. And that's why I hit you. I wouldn't have hit you. You upset me so much. I'm sorry, but you shouldn't have done that. You kept pushing me and pushing me. And after a while, you actually start to believe that you caused this person to be abusive. No, this person is abusive because, one, they can. Because you haven't set a boundary by maybe calling the police the last time he was abusive, which is such an important part, which gets left out and can be a problem later on if they have children and they realize this person is very abusive. There's no record because they've never called the police. So sometimes, like we say, that these forms of abuse, these different types of abuse are covert. So that psychological is head games. It's games in your head to play to make you feel crazy. What are some of the other covert ones you want to bring up?
I like the covert ones because it's more inclusive. It broadens and helps people take a look at what might be going on in their relationship that's not hitting, punching, kicking. But one thing, are you in a relationship where your time is being monitored constantly? Now, people don't think about this.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of times people mistake, especially early on in a relationship, they mistake this intensity for intimacy.
Yeah.
They mistake, they care about me so much because they're wanting to know where I've been all the time. They're wanting me to account for all my time. They're wanting to make plans for all my free time so that I'm all in during that time. And in the beginning, we mistake that. Oh, this must be intimacy.
Yeah.
This must be because they love me so much
Yeah.
that they want to be with me all the time. So we mistake intensity for intimacy. Does your partner question or accuse you of things like driving down the road and you look at the car next to you and there's a man driving? So then he's like, do you know that man? Do you know him? Where do you know him from? Why were you looking at him? And then they take off and they speed or they whatever. That is covert manipulation for power and control. They're afraid of being out of control. You looked the wrong way, but it's little by little, it's taking you hostage in the relationship.
Yeah, that's why you start to almost learn how to not get that person upset or angry at you.
You learn to look down at the ground all
That's
the time
right.
because you're afraid to look around because they're going to accuse you of something.
Absolutely.
You're a wreck if you're out with your friends and it's getting late or you might not get home in time. You can't be present in that moment because you're worried about you're going to be in trouble when you get home. This is going to be bad because I'm going to be 10 minutes late. I'm going to hear about this the whole night long. And so you learn it's not worth it. I'm just not going to go anywhere. It's just not worth it. So little by little, you change the line in the sand. You keep moving your line in the sand of what you're willing to put up with. And most of these things you're not doing consciously. It's a survival mode that kicks in and you start picking behaviors that create the illusion that you're okay, the relationship is okay. And you pick things like over helping or over volunteering Overspending is another big one. Over being a perfectionist, making sure your house is perfectly clean and organized all the time. So your body is picking things for you to do to create the illusion that it's not so bad.
Right. And the other thing, part of that too, is it's making them think that I have to do this so that this person will not get mad. They will not get angry.
No crazy. I want to avoid the crazy.
No.
Yeah.
And that's what this whole thing is about, is avoiding toxic relationships. And today was really about, looking at what abuse is and how something so abusive could create that loss of authenticity, as you said, the loss of your soul, the sense of yourself. But just equally as sad is the mentality of thinking that you don't have value and you don't have worth and you don't think you're good enough. And that keeps you from leaving. If a person leaves, do you have a number that you can give them?
If you're here's what I encourage everybody to do. You don't have to guess and you don't have to be right. And a lot of people don't make the phone call because they're thinking, oh, it's not so bad. They're just going to think I'm exaggerating or I'm overreacting. But call and check it out. And you can call if you're in West Javahi County. Of course, you're welcome to call Stepping Stones. They have people actually answering the phones. You don't get a recording. Actually answering the phones 24/7. That you can just run. Say, I want to run something by you and get some feedback. And that's, should I give the phone number now?
Yeah, go right ahead.
That's
I'm gonna
928-445-4673. It's 928-445-HOPE, HOPE. And somebody's there all the time. Just run it by them. You don't even have to give your name. You don't have to give any identifying information. And they will give you feedback on the stuff you're saying. You may not necessarily have to leave, but to give you feedback on how to proceed in the next few weeks to see if leaving is really an option and something that you ought to do. But kind of get with these advocates that know what they're talking about, that can recognize these very subtle signs and that can recognize the things that you're doing as a victim that's making your life even worse. It's taking you down a black hole. So make that phone call. If you're not in West Javahi County, you're anywhere in the country, you can find your local domestic violence program. It could be a shelter, it can be advocacy center, and look up that number and call those folks and get some feedback is important. You cannot, as smart as you are, as proficient as you are, you cannot fix this by yourself. It's very dangerous. It's not good for your well-being. You'll start having some somatic symptoms of different kinds of illnesses if you don't get help for this situation.
All right. Thank you so much for being here and giving out that information. I know we went over more than normal, but you can't help it. I mean, we could probably go another hour and not stop. But I do want to read a poem, so I'm going to go over longer than it was. So hang in there with me. But this is really good. The author is unknown. It said, I got flowers today. It wasn't my birthday or any special day. We had our first argument last night. And he said a lot of cruel things that really hurt me. I know he is sorry and didn't mean the things he said because he sent me flowers today. I got flowers today. It wasn't our anniversary or any other special day. Last night he threw me into a wall and started to choke me. It seemed like a nightmare. I couldn't believe it was real. I know he must be sorry because he sent me flowers today. I got flowers today and it wasn't Mother's Day or any other special day. Last night he beat me up again and it was much worse than the other times. But I know he was sorry because he sent me flowers today. I got flowers today. Today was a special day. It was the day of my funeral. Last day he killed me. Last night he killed me. He beat me to death. If only I had gathered the courage and strength to leave him, I wouldn't have gotten flowers today. I know it was a heavy topic. I hope you can share it with others. Please share my podcast as always. And the most important thing is go and seek help if you are in this kind of a situation. Thank you very much for today, Robin, for joining us. And please, people, make better choices.